My name is Daniel Hayes, and I live in Denver, Colorado. Over the last few years, I've seen something unexpected rise in popularity across online spaces, workplaces, and even in casual conversations among men, this idea that men are choosing to go their own way. At first, it was a niche corner of the internet, a handful of voices talking about men stepping back from the dating scene, questioning traditional roles, and carving out their own paths in life. But then it grew. Suddenly, it was no longer just a quiet movement. It became a conversation that was happening at coffee shops, in locker rooms at the gym, and over casual dinners with friends. Men were realizing that they didn't have to play by the same rules anymore. Naturally, not everyone liked this change. Many modern women, especially those who had built their identities around the dating world, career success paired with relationship expectations, or social media influence, began to see this trend as a direct challenge to their way of life. The media picked up on it too, often framing it as if men were the problem for opting out. But what many women didn't expect was how resilient and grounded this growing wave of men would be. Attempts to shut it down, shame it, or ridicule it didn't just fail, they made it grow stronger. Let me take you into the heart of how this played out, not just online, but in everyday American life. It began subtly. I remember walking into a coffee shop in downtown Denver one morning, grabbing my usual black coffee, and overhearing two women at the corner table. They were discussing a podcast where the host had called men who embraced independence cowards and afraid of real responsibility. One of them scoffed and said, "They think they can just walk away from relationships? Good luck being lonely forever." They laughed, assuming that men couldn't possibly thrive without women at the center of their lives. But at the same time, across the room, three men in suits were talking quietly about the same topic, except from the other side. One of them said, "Honestly, I've saved more money, my mental health is better, and I've been able to focus on my career since I stopped dating. I didn't realize how much stress I was carrying until I stepped away from it." The others nodded in agreement. These weren't bitter men or angry recluses. They were calm, successful, and genuinely content with their choices. That was the first time I realized how big the disconnect was becoming. Many women assumed men were lost without them, while men were discovering freedom and fulfillment in ways that were hard to explain unless you'd lived it. As months went by, the clash grew louder. Women's magazines started publishing opinion pieces with headlines like, "Why are men so afraid of strong women?" or "The cowardice behind men going their own way." On social media, influencers with millions of followers began making short clips mocking men who opted out of the dating market. One popular creator from Los Angeles named Jessica Moore went viral with a video where she declared, "These guys are just boys who never grew up. They'll come crawling back once they realize how empty their lives are." But the reaction wasn't what she expected. Instead of men backing down, thousands of comments poured in, many from men sharing how they had built thriving businesses, traveled the world, and created meaningful friendships outside of romantic relationships. One man commented, "I didn't crawl back. I climbed higher." Another wrote, "Funny how you think we're empty, but my life has never felt more full." The video ended up backfiring, bringing even more attention to the movement. I decided to dig deeper into what was really happening. I interviewed men from all over America, Chicago, Houston, New York, Seattle. Their stories weren't about bitterness or resentment. Instead, they were about growth, balance, and clarity. Take Michael Reed from Austin, Texas, for example. He had spent years in and out of relationships that drained his finances and emotional energy. He told me, "I was living in debt, working long hours, and always stressed. When I finally took a break from dating, I realized how much of my life I had been neglecting. Now, I own my home, I play guitar with a local band, and I've traveled to 3 countries in the last 2 years. I never would have done any of that if I stayed stuck in the cycle." Then there was Chris Johnson from Seattle, a software developer who used to spend every weekend trying to impress dates, buying expensive dinners, and trying to live up to expectations. "When I stopped," he said, "I discovered peace. I started hiking again, I picked up photography, and I even launched a small tech startup with friends. My life feels like mine now. That's something no one can take away from me." These weren't isolated stories. They echoed everywhere. Still, many women refused to believe it. They doubled down, trying to discredit men's experiences. In New York City, a group of influencers organized a panel discussion titled "Exposing the Truth About Men Going Their Own Way." They filled the stage with women who shared stories about men they claimed were too scared to date or socially awkward. The audience clapped, laughed, and reassured themselves that men would eventually come back to the fold. But what happened after the panel ended was telling. In the lobby, men who had attended stood calmly together, shaking their heads. One of them said, "They don't get it. We're not angry, we're free." Another added, "It's not about avoiding women. It's about living life on our terms." That quiet confidence spoke louder than any insult thrown at them. The harder some women tried to dismantle the movement, the more resilient it became. They underestimated one key thing. Once men experienced genuine independence, financial, emotional, and personal, they didn't want to go back. Attempts to shame them only confirmed why they had walked away in the first place. This shift also began to show up in numbers. Marriage rates in America continued to decline, and surveys showed a growing percentage of men were choosing to remain single by choice, not by accident. Men weren't withdrawing because they couldn't succeed with women. They were stepping back because they realized they didn't need validation to live a fulfilling life. I remember one particular moment in Denver that summed it all up perfectly. At a local community event, a debate was hosted between two groups, one led by women who wanted to reclaim dating culture, and the other by men who represented independent lifestyles. The women argued that men were hiding from responsibility and afraid of strong partners. But when it came time for the men to speak, their leader, a calm and articulate man named Aaron Clark, simply said, "We're not hiding. We're thriving. You say we're afraid, but in truth, we've never felt more confident. The real question is, why are you so afraid of us walking away?" The room fell silent. That single question cut through the noise. Over time, some women began to understand. Not all of them, of course, but a growing number realized that men weren't enemies. They were simply choosing new paths. Instead of mocking, some began to reflect. In cities like San Diego and Boston, I met women who said they respected men's decisions, even if they didn't agree. One woman told me, "At first I thought they were just being selfish. But then I saw how much happier my brother became when he stopped stressing over relationships."